Welcome back to Tabletop Assault. I'm Ross and today we're looking at the Astra Militarum Index Army Rules. Giving you a bit of my first impressions here. Now this is just covering the army rules, so you're looking at your general army rules, the detachment that they have, you're looking at enhancements and stratagems there. Date sheets will be discussed in other videos. So with that, let's have a look at the Astra Militarum Army Rules. Starting with the Astra Militarum Army Rules, so this affects all Astra Militarum armies, even depending on the detachments you've got, this will be the system you use, and it is, of course, voice of command. So it's working a bit more simply now. In your command phase, officer models with this ability issue orders. Each officer data sheet states how many they issue. Data sheet states models that they can affect and must be within 6 inches of the officer model issuing. That's a little bit lower than I want. Really wish this was possibly 9 inches, though I suppose it does work in a bubble area. So last till the next command phase, unless states, can only be affected by one order at a time, with the priority being the last order given. If the unit becomes battle shocked, they do lose that order as well. And they're quite simple: move, 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 improve movement stats by 3. Fix bayonets, which is improved melee weapon skill by 1. Take aim, improve range bliss skill by 1. First rank fire, second rank fire, improve attack of rapid fire weapons by 1. Take cover, improve save by 1 to a maximum of 3+. And duty and honour, improve leadership and obsec stats by 1. So what's interesting here is that they are improving stats rather than making the rolls better, which means they can also be affected by other abilities that do improve the rolls rather than just the skills themselves. So I think that's really efficient, that's really good. If it had been plussing to hit, it wouldn't have been as ideal because the stacking would have been a bit difficult there, but improving the characteristic is very, very good. Then they're simple, easy to use, and you're going to use your army around sort of deciding how they work. So yeah, quite pleased with the voice command. Very, very efficient sort of army rules. Detachment rules next, and we have the first detachment for Astra Militarum, and it is Combined Regiment Detachment. How this works is that each time a unit remains stationary until end of phase, ranged weapons equipped by models in that unit have lethal hits. I'm not too excited about this. Lethal hits can be good, but you've got to remain stationary, which is not ideal. This game is going to rely on movement, taking points, being in better positioning, etc. Staying still is not ideal. It's going to help some units that are going to get lethal hits, and that's going to be super helpful. But I just feel that the cost of remaining stationary might be a little bit too much here. As a detachment rule, absolutely simple to understand, but I don't know if it's particularly one that I'm excited about. On to the Combined Regiment Stratagems. Our first one is reinforcements for 2 command points. So this is used in any phase. Return a destroyed unit to strategic reserve as it was. Characters can't be returned. This can be really good. Simply put, you can put Sentinels back in because they are got the regiment keyword, and so Sentinels in themselves can be very efficient units. So for 2 command points, having them returned, depending on their points, that could be good value return. Next is Fields of Fire for 2 command points. Affects 1 regiment or squadron unit that has not fired yet. After resolving this unit's attack, select 1 enemy unit that was the target of 1 or more of their attacks. Regiment or squadron units that are not battle shocked that target this unit improve their AP by 1. This is a fantastic debuff. Main reason is that you only need to, I suppose you just need to hit the unit, or even if it's just target. It's just targeted the unit, so you don't even need to hit it, and then that debuff applies. So you could essentially just put an infantry squad amount of shooting in, go cool, I target it, going to put in Fields of Fire, and then everyone's getting that extra AP attack. I think that's very, very good against focus fire against key targets. AP has gone down in this edition. That's a good way to reliably get it back on a unit that is causing you problems. Suppression Fire for 1 command point. Infantry only, a unit that has not fired yet, and 1 enemy unit bar monsters and vehicles. If the unit scores 1 or more hits until the end of the opponent's next turn, that enemy has -1 to hit rolls. Very good debuff. It works against the enemies both their ranged and melee attacks, so if there's a unit that is particularly dangerous, that isn't a monster or vehicle, just give them that -1 to hit and it'll really annoy your opponent. So yeah, very good and very cheap at 1 command point. And then we have Expert Bombardiers, which is 1 command point. Declare at the start of the shooting phase, use on Voxcaster and target one enemy visible to it. Until the end of the phase, indirect fire that targets the enemy unit, unless battle shot. Add 1 to hit rolls. Interesting here that it says models from your army that make an attack with indirect weapon, but it doesn't say you need to actually fire indirectly. So that should mean that indirect weapons get this +1 to hit. If they're looking directly at the opponent and they're not suffering the indirect debuff, then they are going to get that +1 to hit, which is really, really nice. Otherwise, it really just helps that ability to make sure if you are firing indirectly at a unit, then you are going to get a bit, ignore some of the debuff you get for firing indirectly. Really nice at one command point. As you might find with Astra Militarum, there might be a few options for firing indirectly here. Inspiring command for one command point, used with an officer in opponent's command phase, can be used if officer is battle shot. It allows the officer can issue one order as if it was the command phase. Likely best use for this is take cover, duty and honour, or even fix bayonets if you're so inclined. Likely we'll see limited use. It is cheap at one command point. I suppose you can double down on an objective, which will be really handy there. Maybe take cover for an important unit. Really, I imagine in a lot of cases you might have actually already planned your orders beforehand, so you might not see use here, but one command point is cheap, but it is a bit situational when you need that emergency order. Then we have Armoured Might at 2 command points, used in the opponent's shooting phase after an enemy selects target, used on one of your vehicles that was a target of attacks. Until the end of the phase, this unit reduces damage characteristic by 1 of that attack, or basically any attacks that come towards it. Great for 2 command points. I mean, if you've got a super heavy, I think that's the clear winner on this one to improve its survivability. Might be too expensive on some units, and then might be too cheap on others. It does have a lot of potential here. Damage mitigation from directly just subtracting 1 from damage characteristics is always very, very good. So yep, I think that's an absolute stellar one. Depending on what vehicles you've got, that might be a really good one to keep in mind. In terms of stratagems, I actually really like them. I think there's a good healthy amount here, though there are quite a few expensive ones. They are useful, but expensive, so you need to make sure that you are getting those command points in. Combined Regiment Enhancements next. We have the Death Mask of Olanius, I think is the term. Officer model only. While the bearer unit is battle shocked, subtract 1 from OBSEC instead of bringing it to 0. Very situational. When you are contesting objectives, you tend to be in close quarters. You're likely not to survive then. Though suppose if you've got mass guard and you do get battle shocked, you can at least have lots of bodies, might be quite good there. But generally I think it's a bit situational. Drill Commander, officer model only, while the bearer is leading a unit. If it remains stationary, crit rolls on unmodified rolls of 5. Tricky one, I don't think you can take in a tank commander as you need to be leading a unit, so that really kind of prevents it from being used there. Likely need to be used with a unit with a better range, some kind of infantry that is going to do a bit of damage there. So I don't know exactly which one that'll be. There might be combinations that'll work well here. Very interested to hear what people think. The ever trusted Kurov's Aquila next, which can be on officer model only. Once per battle, after your opponent uses a stratagem, use this to increase its command point use by 1. Very good, we'll almost see use in just about every game. Even making rerolls more expensive for your opponent is going to be an absolute pain to them, but your opponent might have a key strategy here that would make their stratagem a little bit too costly to use over and over again. Now, interesting thing I'll say here is that I believe the 0 command point captain rule that we see quite often in terms of some units, I think would supersede this, because you are making it increase by 1, but I'd say that they are just making it that they don't spend any, so it depends on the wording on that one. I would say it supersedes it, but I'm interested to hear what people's thoughts are. Does the sort of captain 0 command point ability once per game, or I think some of them are more than that, does it mean that they're spending 0 or are they spending 1? Let me know. Then Grand Strategist, officer model only. In your command phase, officer can issue 1 additional order. Almost always useful. Likely to probably see this quite often. Just having that extra order would be really, really helpful for many, many units. So yeah, very, very easy one to pick there. And that's it for my first impressions for the Astra Militarum Index Army rules. Overall, I really like it. Not very sure about the Born Soldiers Detachment rule, the lethal hits thing. Staying still in this, I just feel mobility is going to be too important, though I suppose you could try and gunline it, then it's going to be really, really good. But in terms of command points, really happy with that. Orders, really happy with that. When I say command points, I mean stratagems. And I think the enhancements were okay. There's some really nice ones there as well. Very intrigued to see what people think of Astra Militarum. It is an army that I'm constantly adding to myself in terms of painting, just trying to find the time. And yeah, just very, very intrigued what people have to say. Please comment, share, like and subscribe, and we'll see you on our Tabletop Assault Battle Report.